Welcome back to another edition of the Wildly Authentic Podcast.
We're wild.
Real.
And we're wildly authentic.
I was like that little dance you do. It's good. It's a nice beat you keep too.
It's Mother's Day. I can do whatever I want.
You beat me to the chase. Happy Mother's Day.
Thanks, babe.
Yeah. To all you moms out there, happy Mother's Day. The ones who raised us, the ones who bathed us, the ones who made us who we are today. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Happy Mother's Day to your mom.
Yes.
So excited. Today, we'd like to discuss just a little bit of perspective on things that we have learned. A lot of what's informed our experience is what we have learned from others and a little bit of just what we've lived. And so I think today's going to be a fun episode in that we can talk about the conglomeration of all that in the blender for what has made your perspective and a little bit of that wisdom, even though we only have 3 kids under 5.
Well, there's only,
it's a lot, and a dog, which is like a whole nother situation.
Only.
But yeah, we thought we'd talk about some of the things that are taboo, some of the things that are the hot topics of the day, and also maybe just a couple nuggets of experience that I shouldn't say we have lived because it's not Happy Mother's Day to me, but that you have lived. And I'll just be the one that asks a lot of questions.
To start, can we talk about the best Mother Day TikToks that are out there?
Oh boy.
I think my favorite is the one of Will Ferrell. He's in the bathtub with his hair in curlers and he's on his phone and is let's do it. And the captions, everything you shop for this week can just be counted as a Mother's Day gift. I'm like, yes.
That's a great question. To all the fellas out there, question. Do you buy your wife, who's also a mom, do you buy her a Mother's Day gift, or does she buy her own Mother's Day gift?
Or do you buy her a gift and say it's from your kids if they're little?
Yeah.
Or are you an acts of service? That's nice too.
Yeah. But that's the first question. Question number 2, for all you dog dads out there, do you buy the dog mom something from Fido?
Because mothers look different. Some are dog moms, some are mother of children, some are mothers of children that are grown up and gone out of the house, and some are mothers that would love to be mothers and have never actually been able to conceive. So happy Mother's Day to every type of mother out there.
Even the dog moms and the gecko moms and the goldfish moms. It's all moms. Although I will say goldfish don't talk back.
Oof.
Dogs
don't talk back either.
Yeah, they do. They're just naughty.
They have attitudes or they slobber.
That's right.
Okay, here's the question.
Yeah.
What is with the big difference on Mother's Day versus Father's Day? It's what do you want for Mother's Day? Oh, I want the whole family to go out to brunch and I want to just...
Buckle up, kids. It's about to get real.
He's never asked me what I want for Mother's Day, but if I picture the perfect day, it's
because it's Mother's Day. It's not your birthday.
My kids come jump in bed with me and they talk so nice and there's no fighting for the day. And he brings me coffee in bed and he's shirtless, Fabio, serving me. Not really that part.
It's getting a little weird.
But I love coffee and bed and I get to just hang with my kids. And then the day is just so nice and I don't have to do dishes or clean. And it's just a nice day. Perfect day. And I get to be with my kids. Because after all,
cut to the chase. We're ready.
Celebrating Mother's Day. But Father's Day, fathers are I want to go golfing. We're out of here. I'm you don't want to hang with your kids? No, it's so true. Father's Day is buy him a new golf club so he can go golfing all day long. Can we just talk about that?
Yeah, let's talk about it. This is the societal problem.
All I wanted to say was that.
Oh, okay. You didn't really want to talk about it? We're asking you for your opinion.
I just want to point it out.
There's a lot of open-ended questions in this episode so far. I think we've gotten 4. But anyway, we'll just leave it to you in the comments. I think that is actually a really interesting point. And I saw a really funny TikTok the other day that was all I want for Mother's Day is it was a bottle of Tito's and no kids yelling at me. And I don't know. Maybe it was that Will Ferrell one that you're talking about. I don't know. That was interesting.
I love me some Will.
So let me ask, let's just dive right in. I think there are a lot of, let's just talk about from experience. And I will speak for you, for us, in saying that we don't claim to be experts. We don't claim to have the right view on everything. And we don't claim to have done everything right. But What we do have is our own experience, and we can share that. And hopefully, for the people listening, young moms, because that is our experience right now, say your experience, hopefully you can take maybe one or two things that we have put into practice, things that we've learned from others, as well as things that we've implemented on our own. And maybe you can take one or two of those things and include it in your momming routine.
Love it.
Yeah. So what would you say you've gone through three different two boys, one girl of the most beautiful, amazing children in the entire world. And obviously the best husband in the process.
Obviously.
What would you say is your advice to someone that is starting their momming journey on number one? What were the things that you thought about before having our first child? Maybe your experience that you thought you knew it was coming and then you lived it after he was born. What differences are there and what things did you expect? And what were some of the things that you were like, wow, I wasn't prepared for that?
So I'm going to be really honest. I was really afraid to have kids in the fact that I felt very inadequate to be a mom.
Why'd you feel that?
It was just a big responsibility. It's not only do I just have to keep them safe, it is my job to develop them and to give them the tools in life to succeed or not succeed. And it just seemed like a lot. And I felt, I always joke that I'm a little cold-hearted. Like I don't have that warmth to me besides to a very select few, my husband being one. I'm not like the warm and fuzzy type of person. So I was just afraid I wasn't going to be a good nurturer.
Yeah.
Just a quick background. I'm one of 11 kids. I'm number 9. And as much as I love being from a big family and it has taught me so much, it's especially taught me to be like driven and a hard worker and to go get what I want in life. I would say a big piece that I didn't have growing up was a lot of just physical nurturing. So when we decided to have kids, I think I remember telling you this. I was like, I want my kids to be so loved. Like I want to overly abundantly love them physically, emotionally, make them feel very secure.
I don't know that it's necessarily, I should say, yes, loved, but it's also overtly showing them that.
Physical affection. I grew up surrounded by boys. So like I got swirlies growing up.
Hey, run that back one more time. You got what?
I legit got swirlies when I was a little girl.
Those of you that don't know what a swirly is.
Like I was held upside down by my brothers, head in the toilet. And I'm sure I deserved it 100%.
I don't think anyone deserves that. And I also think
I'm sure I did.
For all of the 90s children out there, dude, swirlies, that was a thing.
It was a thing. It was so disgusting because like it was so gross.
What's even worse is at least your swirlies were like in your home bathroom.
That's true.
Maybe you can find some confidence. There were
Bathrooms.
swirlies that happened hate to say it, in like high school, grade school, in like public restrooms.
So yucky. If you have been
school.
swirlied, please reach out. We would love to. I would love to connect. No, I'm kidding. But
Anyway,
having said all that,
we digress.
yeah, I wanted that physical affection. And it scared me just because I wasn't great at showing that to other people outside of my very small realm. Really my husband, honestly. I was a little afraid. So going into it, my one plan of attack to start before I even had kids was get as much wisdom and advice from women ahead of me, experienced women, and also be very intentional. I feel like we live in a world where parenting is survival and kids rule the parents. Kids are unruly. And I'm not talking about your random, like they're tired and they're upset and whatever. Every kid has their moment. But I just felt like we lived in a society where telling your kid no was discouraged and letting your kid fall on the floor and throw a tantrum was status quo. And I knew I wanted to instill discipline and I wanted to instill social cues, be social. I love Jordan Peterson. He talks a lot about like childhood development. And I listened to a lot of educational podcasts on child development, but also I really went to local women, my mom being one. My mom, I asked her for my baby shower was just to write me a book of tips for parenting at different stages of life. And I think that's probably one of the most valuable things she could have offered. And I always tell my mom, she's the most humble woman. My mom she really had 13 kids. Two of them are in heaven, but I'm one of 11 now living. And she has the most knowledge and understanding of young kids and raising them. So that was one of the things that I asked for my first baby shower, was her to write me just a guide to different stages of raising children.
Which I feel like at some point in time, we'd love to have your mom on here, because someone that can claim, just in general, just take it to like the professional world. If someone can claim to be an expert in a field, a lot of that is experience and study, right? So
Right.
like an expert, you can be a professor, or you can go talk on podcasts about health and wellness or whatever. Think of like but there is very few individuals out there that can claim expertise on child raising.
But she doesn't even claim expertise.
No,
It's
but I'm
so
saying
funny.
to do it 11 times.
She is.
She's not,
Yeah.
she will, like, anyone would admit it. You're not perfect. I get that. And she's arguably one of the more humble people that I've ever met in my life. But to be able to learn from that,
Right.
again, I think going back to what I said earlier, to gain one or two things,
Right.
not everything, it's not perfect. One or two things, for example, blanket training, or one of the other things that she practiced while managing 11 in a household is crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. So gleaning knowledge and advice from experienced women, and then just a lot of prayer, a lot of humbling yourself, and then also just be very willing to put in the hard work. We started from the very beginning. We said, okay, what were the characteristics we want to instill in our children? And I write them down and I reevaluate often. I do weekly goals with my children. I do monthly goals. And then I do, what am I working on to get my kids to this? So for instance, one of my goals since my children were born were, I want my kids to be well-spoken, and I want them to talk to adults, and I want them to look at them in the eyes. And that is something ever since Maverick was able to walk or see strangers, like go say hi. And I would go say hi. So just little things like that make a big deal. And I got that from other people who said, this is one thing I wish my kids were better at, or this is one thing we did. I'm like, I love that. And to be fair though, like even my parents, there are things that we don't love that they did. And so we don't do everything. So you take what you think is good. And then in 30 years, we're going to be looking back and be like, yeah, we probably wouldn't do this.
Let me ask you this. How much of your childhood informs your parental instincts or patterns that you practice in your momming adventure?
Oh, I'm
negative or positive?
Right. I don't think I'm like, can give you a statistic. I would guess like 90%. And I would think that's the same for everyone. I think if someone had a traumatic childhood, they were going to do or not do something based on that. So same with me. I look back, like what are the good? What are the negative?
Yeah.
And again, then it goes back to what are the characteristics I want out of my child. And I'm saying all this, you decided this just as much as I did. So.
I think everyone also goes like on a different journey too. For us, I feel like in our dating and engagement relationship, like we developed a really great friendship. Right. As a basis. And then our journey led us to waiting 10 years until we had children. So can you talk about that, the journey of that waiting? Why was that good? Did you feel like it was bad? Did you feel like during that time, because let's be honest, like a lot of our friends were starting their parenting journeys, and that was something that we knew we wanted. Yeah, I don't know. Just any thoughts along those lines?
I think that goes back to just first of all, I would say we are just centered on our relationship with the Lord and our pursuit of our overall goal in life, which is to live for the Lord, share the gospel. And part of that relationship with the Lord is always seeking his will. And I think that was from the very beginning of our marriage. We knew we wanted to have kids, but we always said, we're not going to do things because other people do them or because my family does this one way or your family does it. We're going to do it because we think it's right for us. And that's what the Lord wants for us. And I feel like we would come together. We'd be like, how are we feeling about kids? Let's pray about it. Doesn't seem like the right time. So we would push it off. And we would do that every 6 months or a year. And it was just, it was cool to see. You got to work in college ministry. And then I went to nursing school. And we just continued to reconvene. Is this the right time the Lord has for us? No. And I would say part of that a little bit too was long-term planning. I knew things that I wanted in life was to be able to You being in the ministry at the time and making very little money, I knew I wanted to be able to monetarily contribute. Let's say if I wanted to pay to bring my kids and culture them and travel with them, or bring them on mission trips, or put them in private school, or whatever I decided I wanted to do, I wanted to be able to have the freedom to be able to do that and educate myself. And I think that's something that's always been super important to me, is to educate myself. And as much as I love you, being able to sustain myself if I needed to.
Yeah.
Just going through that journey. I think we always reconvene. When is the right time?
Yeah.
And then also thinking through, like I always say this, plan for the future, especially young girls. What do you want in life? Do you want a family? What do you want that to look like? Do you want to stay at home? Which my mom stayed at home, and I respect her more than any hardest working woman I've ever met.
Yeah.
She was not staying at home playing with her kids. She was not staying at home sitting on the porch while her kids played. Like, she was the hardest working woman. And I always wanted to model my life around like the Proverbs 31 woman too. She was a hardworking woman. She managed her household. She was a businesswoman. She bought and sold. And I love the phrase where it talks about she made her husband known. She was her husband's teammate. So that was always my goal. For me, I wanted to be able to contribute in the way that was best for our family. And we talked about all this also.
Yeah. I'd like to in a little bit return back to your perspective on Proverbs 31, because I think that's ultimately what you've attempted to model after. Because if there's any like high level takeaway from what we're talking about, the absolute truth, I am convinced, we are convinced, absolute truth comes from the scriptures. That is the most pure form of truth you can find. And so if you can conclude truth from the Bible about motherhood, I mean, there's no better place to go. Yeah, experience is great. But like ultimately everyone's experience is different. So I think at some point in time, maybe here in a little bit, we can return back to that. So we talked about a little bit about what you felt, maybe, I don't know if fears is the right word, but things you thought about before having children.
Yeah.
Then we had our firstborn, and then your experience after. So let's talk about the experience with one. I think it's funny because
this is fun. Yeah.
Everybody told us, here's how I explain it. So I think that every big life experience, like marriage and children, for example, exposes a whole new depth of selfishness in a person that you never thought was possible. And one of the things that I have learned through getting married to you is it just exposed a whole new layer of selfishness and like refinement in my life. That first child in a whole nother level exposes it just in a whole nother way. That's one thing that I think for me was so impactful, is just like, now you have another life that you're trying to care for and raise and work together on. But maybe talk a little bit about just your experience. Like Maverick, our firstborn, was a tough birth. Like that was hard. It was hard afterwards working through that, but let's just keep it like as a parenting perspective, and you as a mom, maybe talk a little bit about your experience in that department.
See, I feel like the firstborn is always a learning curve. And I feel like most parents will tell you that. And it was for me too. You don't know how you're going to feel. And then of course, like it comes pretty natural for most women when they have their first. Yeah. You love them and you adore them. And for me, it was like every stage I went through, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I love this stage even better. I love this stage even better. But I would say, like, for myself, I was again big on, I wanted to learn the most, to do the best. I did all the research. I'm a big believer in things like actual co-sleeping is not safe, and things like
hot take.
I'm all about the hot takes. I'll throw those out there. Sleep training is incredible for creating these structures, because even though as much as I love motherhood, I'm still married and I still have a husband, and that is still ultimately the most important relationship. So working through finding a balance as a mother without losing myself in motherhood.
Yeah.
I feel like it's actually the more selfish thing to do, to lose yourself in motherhood. And that's really hard. It's a really hard thing, because as a woman, like, we become, this is our child. We are meant to prioritize this over everything and keep it alive. I think of those like I felt like I was just like that tiger in the jungle. This is my job, to keep it alive. Yeah. But then when you step back, it's like your job is so much more. It's nurturing. It's giving them health, but also it's like sleep. If you do research, sleep is the most incredible thing you could do for your child is teaching that child to sleep because their brain develops. And so it's selfishly, I want that baby to sleep on me because it feels so good to me and it feels right. And the whole saying, moms know best. And I'm just like, not when you're sleep deprived and emotional and making every decision off your emotions. Like sometimes you got to swaddle that baby and put it in bed and give it a good night's sleep so it can flourish. So I think when you're first starting motherhood, it's emotional and it's exhausting. So really having good structure helps a lot.
You mentioned losing yourself in motherhood. So I think that you have a very good perspective of that in terms of being a working mom.
Right.
So you can speak from that out of experience. What would be your valuation or your encouragement to someone who has chosen to be a full-time mom as their job? And how can that individual not lose themselves in that role? Because it's a very important role.
Yeah. Just to clarify, every mom is a full-time mom.
Right.
You mean mom who stays at home.
Correct. A stay-at-home mom who's there full-time. And then obviously your experience is you stayed home on maternity leave for X amount of time and then you went back to work. So how do you not lose yourself as a mom or lose your identity, I guess you could say, while being the stay-at-home mom?
So I was number 9 of 11 kids. So I wasn't around when my mom had her first child or two. But I will tell you, and I bring it back to scripture a little bit. The scripture talks a lot about being a hardworking person. It talks about the ant not being a lazy, and there's a lot of references to working hard. Work is good, but there's not a lot of great examples of like specific women except for the Proverbs 31 woman. And even though my mom was a stay-at-home mom, she like exemplified what that looked like. So she didn't necessarily get monetarily paid like the Proverbs 31 woman did, but she got up before everyone else in my family. She had her devotion. So I remember waking up as a young child to my mom reading her Bible. And then she got up and she would cook everyone breakfast and we would have family devotions. And from the moment I saw her to the moment I went to bed, she was working. She was a hardworking woman. So I would say being a stay-at-home mom, like I feel like we live in a culture where we want to compare the two. Are you a stay-at-home mom or are you a working mom? And like we all have opinions. And this is what I would say. The Lord calls everyone to different things for different reasons. But the challenge that I would challenge any younger person is be a hardworking woman. Your goal shouldn't be to stay at home and play with your kids. Because 1, that's not what the Lord's called you to. 2, it does not help your children and you are not setting a good example. And 3, you won't have fulfillment. And then you will lose yourself.
Yeah.
Because we all need that hard work because that is just inherently as humans what we need.
Yeah. Working hard and being the household manager.
Yeah. And that can look anyways. And it was important to me to be a working woman. For different reasons, I wanted to set that example. I wanted to be efficient in that. But the idea is, am I able to manage my house with what I'm doing outside of the home? That's something I'm always evaluating as a working woman. Are my children, are we working on their training? Are they respectful to adults? Do they talk well? Are they throwing tantrums? Like that is something like my children are not allowed to throw tantrums. And we work very hard.
My children aren't either.
But you know what I'm saying? I have my goals. And if it got to a point where like, I need to stay at home, maybe I need to reevaluate going to work. And I've worked hard to create the kind of job where I'm not gone early in the morning to late at night. And I have more flexibility in my career. And I've worked hard to get there. I knew I didn't want to be a bedside nurse working 12 hours, like being gone from my children for 12 hours. I just knew that was not something I was willing to do because I ultimately knew I would not be able to do the things that I wanted to accomplish with that. Yep. But I think you just have to evaluate. But on the flip side, being a stay-at-home mom and not taking the time to invest in yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, just because you're there physically does not mean you're present emotionally. And quantitative time does not mean quality time. So I know so many women that are at home full-time, little help from their spouses or little help from anyone. And they're emotionally they're depressed, they're spent, they're exhausted. They'll tell you, I have no time for myself. They're out of shape. They can't take care of their body, which we are God has given us a body taken care of. Like it is your response. I can look at someone and say, you care about taking care of your life by how you take care of your body. And there's grace at periods of times. Postpartum, you got to get, it takes time and all of that. But
There's grace for you too, fellas out there. For example,
I have less grace for men.
I started Operation Jackhammer in January. If you don't know about Operation Jackhammer, it's building the temple, baby.
I think so. I know, but I know women on both sides. I know women though that work though, and at the same time they do not manage their time well,
Sure.
and they're just spent and they're exhausted. So I think as a mother and also taking care of yourself, you can tell your kids everything you want, but if you are not living by example, your kids aren't going to do what you tell them.
Yeah.
I love it. I think you are really good at this, setting an example for our kids. Like every morning, our kids are like, Dad, make me a power smoothie, or let's do some push-ups, Dad, or like they want to exercise. And then my son will be like, is that nutritious, Mom? Like he's totally, I love it though, because it's got that mindset. Like we want to live a healthy, but living a healthy lifestyle includes sometimes for a mother, that mental break. People always joke like, why don't you have a gym in your house? We built a house last year with lots of space. And I'm like, because I need my hour to get out of the house. I need that mental break where I can turn it off. And that way I can be refreshed and able to go home and just be focused on my children.
You said something earlier that I think is important to come back to. And also, I want to disclose that I'm asking questions that I know the answer to because we do this as a team.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I feel like I'm asking these questions and I just want everyone to know I know the answers. And some of these I've had quite a bit to do with.
But I also don't know any of the questions he's going to ask me.
Yeah, facts. That's true. You mentioned something earlier that has been arguably one of the best gifts that was given to us at your first baby shower. I know that obviously the number one, the best gift that you were given was the advice book from your mom.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Hands down.
Just incredible. But let's just say maybe the second best, they're not on total par, but they're close. I'm curious what you would say. What would be the second best gift that you were given?
I think it's something that was, and I don't know if we would have done it with our first, if it hadn't been gifted to us, because I didn't know much
You're
about
going
it.
the right direction. I know where this is going.
It was taking care of babies, our sleep training.
Yes.
Our sleep training. And it was gifted by my very sweet friend when we lived in Florida.
Yeah.
And she just had such great experience with her kids. And I was like, okay, great. So she gifted it to us. I'm like, I'm a big learner. I will always take time to listen, even if I will disagree with you. I will take the time to listen and learn. And Kara, she was a nurse. Her husband was a physician, and she was like the baby whisperer, could help all of her friends. And long story short, she created this sleep program,
sleep training course.
But when I started, I was a little skeptic because I'm not into woo-woo stuff. Like I'm not into co-sleeping, but I loved it because it was so educational on child development.
Yeah.
And everything she told you to do, there was a why to go along with. They're on this stage and they need this and you can do this. And another thing that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to like do the whole cry it out thing too. And I lived Kara because she like gave you different stages of like, you don't have to do this if you want. And so anyways, I'm on baby number 3. And every time I get pregnant, I'm like, okay, let's re-listen to Kara. Everything she has to say, we're going to implement it. And guys, I'm telling you, like my babies, I've had 3. And this is what happens. You have one baby and you're like, oh my gosh, I learned this sleep training. And you know what other parents say? Just wait till your next one. I can't tell you how many times I've been told that.
Every child.
And I make a point not to ever say that to anyone ever, because that's the stupidest thing you can say to someone. Wait till you have another one.
Wait till you're second. Wait till you're third.
And then we had our second one and we did sleep training and exactly the same, because it wasn't just happenstance. Like you were consistent in your feeds daily and all the things Kara tells you to do. What does she always say? You get your day sleep figured out, your night sleep will come. And you're just so consistent. And then we did it with the second one, and same thing. My babies were sleeping 8 hours by 8 weeks. By 3 months old, they are sleeping 12 hours through the night. And, you have 2 and everyone's wait till you're third. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. No one has said wait till you're 4th though. I'm on baby number 3. She's sleeping through the night, 12 hours, exactly like her brothers, all different personalities. Personality does not dictate sleep. You create the habits. It's like you train the
Yeah.
child to do what it's going to do. I don't say that. Other people say that.
Also, the Bible says that.
And the Bible says that. And the Bible says that.
Train up a child in
Why
the
doesn't
way
the
you should
Bible
go.
give us more clear instruction? Why wouldn't you just tell us exactly what to do?
The exact parenting handbook. It gives you good guiding principles, and everyone does it differently.
No.
But I think overall, we are big proponents of sleep training. And another thing for you dads, I know it's not Father's Day, but for the record, I do not do well in the baby stage. It's just not my thing. But what I love about taking care of babies is it gives you processes to go through. So it's like you literally, the cries method, all the things that are in that course, because you are parenting together, it gives you a process. And ultimately, it's hard sometimes because it's baby just wants mom. Okay. But you as the parent, because you as a father are a parent too, you can work through that process. And if at the end of that process, you can't, then obviously mom. But that's what I love about it.
That was so hot. You literally said the cries method.
I like that.
But I will also say, as a mother, the best thing a father can do, even if you don't love the newborn stage,
I love my children.
is you do it. You do it. The fact that my husband can do every single thing I do besides breastfeeding, you can try. You got a nipple, Greg. But
I really appreciate that. Yeah, that is the one thing I am unable to do.
The fact is, though, like you did everything. You didn't love it, but there were just times where I was exhausted and you're like, give me the baby. I'm going to get it to sleep. Didn't matter. And that is the best thing you can do for a mother is do as much as she does. Do as much of the work. So dads out there, just because you don't like baby stage, guess what? It's still your baby. Put in the work. Do the work. And that's going to look different for everyone. But that is just going to make that newborn stage so much better if you feel like you have a teammate doing as much as you.
Yeah.
And then sometimes that just means like Lance, like when he could just tell I'm exhausted. My baby number one, I had a 4th-degree tear and without TMI, I couldn't walk for 4 weeks.
It was a rough go.
I was on bed rest. And then I was in excruciating pain at certain times when my muscles would contract, screaming in pain. And sometimes it was just like Lance would just take the baby, be like, go to the bath, go take a bath.
Yeah.
And so a partner of a mom can just help. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. That is one thing that I think was the kindest gift that someone gave to us was the Taking Care of Babies course, sleep training course. I think another gift that was given to us in practical wisdom was your mother educating us on the value of blanket training.
Yes.
So again, and this is like parenting, but it's equally a part of keeping your sanity as a mom. Yeah. So I think it's very important to talk about this in relationship to Mother's Day, because it's like you talked about this, you need to keep your sanity.
Right.
And so sleep is a big deal. It's a big deal for your kid. It's a big deal for you.
Yeah.
If you don't get it, if they don't get it, you're going to lose it. But another big deal is creating boundaries.
Yeah.
And starting that at an early cognitive age when they're developing. And I think that's where blanket training is dynamite. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I did a whole YouTube video on blanket training. And guys, when I tell you, like, people came out of the woodwork to come after me.
It blew it up.
It blew it up. Now, to be fair, I didn't realize that there's this whole religion where like they did this psycho thing and they called it blanket training.
That was actually, you released that, and it was like during the time of the psychopath Duggar stuff that was coming out.
I didn't even know. I never had watched the show. I didn't realize. So just me clarify, the way that I blanket train, the way we blanket train is very kind. It's reinforcing small boundaries. And I have a video on it if you want to go watch it. But just the whole idea is like just reinforcing boundaries. And I think we did it with blanket training. And then once it got a little older, we would use a large like ski rope out in the yard. I would give like my 1.5-year-old or 2-year-old a big boundary. And I say, you can do whatever you want. Just your one rule is you can't step over that rope.
I think that's the cool part. Again, and this is just practical wisdom. We saw this. Obviously, your mom did this 11 times, but we've also seen some of your siblings do it.
Yeah.
And we've watched how it is indeed effective. And so we saw it in practice.
Yeah.
And then we were able to like, yes, that is one thing we definitely want to do.
And I think it goes back to training something that a hot topic in today's parenting world is discipline. Is don't spank, don't say no, don't do this, don't do that. You're going to traumatize them because there are people who abuse, people that do this, do that.
Yeah.
And I think the more important topic we need to be talking about is before you even start talking about discipline, I think you need to realize the difference between training and discipline. And I never forget like learning that, like a light bulb came on for me. It's like, you should never discipline a child until they've been trained not to do that. And then once they know not to do something and they've been given the ability and the understanding and the information, and then you discipline, whether that's timeout or putting their nose in the corner or washing their mouth out with soap or spanking. Yes, I'm a proponent of spanking in a non-abusive kind way. And that's like a whole other subject. Hot take. But you should never discipline a child if you haven't trained them. So that's the whole idea when you to train a child with boundaries, help them know what's okay or not okay. Really get down on their level and be kind and explain and to talk to them until they understand that.
Yeah.
And then you kind of work through with your spouse, what's an appropriate discipline. And don't you agree? Like you need to be on the same page.
Oh yeah, 100%. And with blanket training, we were certainly on the same page.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that one of my brother-in-laws told me was the great part about blanket training is that little guy, whatever, 1 year old or less than 1 year old, there's not a lot they understand. But the best part about blanket training, there's only one thing. There's only one rule.
One rule.
And
yeah.
the only rule is
Don't get off.
Don't get off
Just
blanket.
don't get off. It was just simple.
You know?
Kids are very simple when they're little. So giving them clear understanding. Yeah. We started as soon as they understood no. And it's usually shortly after they start crawling. But
yeah. Anyway,
moving on.
We'll do maybe a talk on that at some point in time.
That one's a hot topic.
Let's talk about the Proverbs 31 woman. We mentioned a few guiding principles early on in the episode, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe just tell me a little more of an overarching perspective of your take on who is that woman and what are some things that you have found as practical wisdom that's laid out in Proverbs 31 that you can practice and that all the moms out there can have a go at. Because I think, if I may, the one thing that I feel like you cannot necessarily give advice on because you haven't experienced it yet is like older children. Mm-hmm. So like we have children that are 5 years and below. So we can talk intelligently about that out of experience. But the scripture informs us so well of truths that span the whole age gap. And so like for the moms that are out there, just give me maybe your take on Proverbs 31 and what that looks like.
Without diving deep into the theology of it, just the overview of it. If I were to step back and look at her and say, what can I learn from her? I would say the intentionality. Everything she does is with an intention. And she's wise in the fact she starts with nothing and she creates something. And then she takes that next something and she creates something bigger. And then she takes that next something and she sells it. And then she takes the money from that and she buys fields. And then she takes the money from those fields. She dresses her family in the finest linen. And she makes a name for her family, for her husband even, and it all comes from a place of everything she does is with intention. She's good to her household workers. And that's another thing. Like that Proverbs 31 woman, she had a lot of help.
She had some help.
She had help. So anyone out there is like feeling guilty for having help, girl, don't you feel guilty? Like you get all the help you need. Like
that's right.
What is going to make you efficient? But like also keep your goals in mind. So just an overview, someone who's very intentional though. So
I would say too, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't just acknowledge the fact that for those of you that are maybe less biblically informed, this is something that we've built our life on. So it's easy to talk casually like Proverbs 31. Proverbs is a book of the Bible that gives you 31 chapters of practical wisdom. And so it's really beautiful. And I don't care where you're at in your spiritual journey. It is a beautiful book in terms of it gives you pure truth and wisdom that will change your life. And it will make you a better person, regardless of where you fall in your spiritual journey. For us, our firm belief is in Jesus Christ, his death, burial, and resurrection. And that's why we believe the entirety of the gospel, right? But
Mhm.
for someone that may not believe that or may not understand, I just want to make sure that we acknowledge where that's coming from is the scripture. And specifically in Proverbs, the last chapter, it talks very clearly and it spells out what this woman looks like. And that is what we're trying to, or I should say, that is what you're discussing. I just feel like it was important to at
Right.
least say that because
No, for
I
sure.
can't assume that everybody that's watching this is going to know exactly. I mean, there's a lot of biblical illiteracy out there,
And I
and that's
think
okay.
And I think what you can take from it is just our intention, though.
Yeah.
Like just being intentional, like everything we do comes from what we've learned from our faith and from, yeah, I think that is so important.
Anyway,
And that is a free thing. Like you don't have to be crazy educated to be
no.
intentional. Sit down, write a list. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great plug for, I think sometimes maybe I'm not a mom, but I've heard it said, sometimes if you are in a position where you're feeling a bit lost, or maybe you find yourself where you're losing your identity, a really great place to start is opening up the Bible and checking out Proverbs 31 and studying that woman and modeling your life after that. And then as well, getting more practical wisdom from friends, peers, and identifying things that you're like, wow, I really admire that about you and your family. Can you tell me how you've done that? Can you talk maybe a little bit more about that, the practical side of things where you've identified things, whether it be from one of your friends or another couple that has done things? Because again, we waited 10 years to have children. We saw a lot of different examples. So again, on that practical wisdom side of things where you identified something that someone else was practicing in their momming journey where you're like, hey, tell me more about that. Because I think something that you need to dispel right now is there is no pride in motherhood in terms of I'm the best, I know everything that I'm doing. It's, hey, listen, if someone else is doing something that you admire, then go and talk to them and ask
Right.
them about that. That's okay. And I don't go to the moms groups or anything like that, but I think that's something that even on a dad level, we're bad at, because it's if someone else is practicing something that's really good, how you're raising your children or you're dadding so well or whatever, it's good to ask. So maybe, is there anything like that you spoke with someone else about that you really admired? They told you something that you put into practice?
Yeah, I think like you said, everyone's going to do things a little different and that's okay. I think some of like more like step back, some advice I got from older women that have gone through life and I feel like they did well with being grounded and they're raising their family and what life looks like was a couple things. They said, one, there's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be easier and harder times. Having a good support system, having women ahead of you to mentor you or to help just be a guide, but then also keeping your own glass full. So, how are you going to invest in someone else if you don't have the capability to invest in them? It's like my favorite analogy is you're on an airplane and the person says, in case of an emergency and the oxygen comes out, put the oxygen on yourself before you put it on your baby. Meaning, how are you going to help your baby if you've passed out from no oxygen?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same thing as a parent. You have to take the time to invest in yourself mentally, physically, spiritually, to be able to invest in your children. And it goes the same for investing in your marriage. Like you have to sleep. Okay. Like sleep is one of those like women, I don't know why. A lot of women, they carry this pride of, I haven't gotten sleep in 2 years. Like I'm a good mom. No, you're not. That's actually really foolish.
Yeah.
Because I can show you all the studies of how dangerous and how actually sleep deprivation is a form of torture. You cannot make good decisions. On this whole, like, trust yourself. I'm a mom. I know best. How can you know best if you're sleep deprived? You're nutritionally deficient. You aren't investing in yourself physically. When's the last time you've invested in yourself mentally or spiritually? So really you're just surviving and you're giving your kids low quality parenting because you have this emotional attachment to doing what you think is best.
What was the study that you told me about? I can't remember. It was like sleep deprivation is equal to like a certain blood alcohol level or something like that. You remember that?
Yeah. Being awake for 24 hours. Now, I need to look this up to give you the exact number, but it's like blowing over a 1.0. It's going to be like, now people are going to look me up and it's like blowing like a 1.2 if you were to get like
It
alcohol.
doesn't. It doesn't matter what
Yeah.
point. The point is,
You are
it's bad.
intoxicated, not getting sleep. Like
Yeah.
you do not act properly. So like you cannot drink and drive if you are over a 0.08. Every state's different. I'm from Indiana. But like that's whole idea. I'm like, so you go without sleep. Are you telling me like I can make better decisions being legally intoxicated? And then I would say some people like want like very like tangible parenting tips to be perfect. Going back to investing in yourself, you have to invest in your marriage. And that's going to be looked differently for a single parent or someone that's maybe not in a good co-parenting situation, like a good marriage. But that is something older people have said, you are going to teach your kids so much, especially like physical affection. If you and your spouse are kind to one another, you're physically affectionate to one another, especially the man to the woman. If the woman is respectful if you're both respectful to each other, but it goes back to the woman is the nurturer, the man is like the protector or like I'm not even going to try to use words because I'm going to get skewered for it. But just that idea though, like of creating that harmony in the home with the spouse. And that was a good advice because it's like, you can do all the practical things, but if you're not doing that, there's not going to be harmony and your kids aren't going to believe what you're trying to teach them.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a good overview advice. Yeah, you can do all those little things, but if you're not taking care of yourself and you're not investing in like harmony in your home, good luck.
I love those two truths. I like the analogy that you used about the oxygen mask thing. Yeah. I think that's such a good like picture of what it looks like to you have to care for yourself. That's fantastic advice. And then two, I really appreciate there is no way that we could parent well without investing in one another.
Yeah.
And so that is dynamite advice. So I think that's really cool. So we have worked our way motherhood like your experience pre first baby, post baby, and some of the advice, the things. As you like wrap this up, obviously our experience, 3 kids, 5 years and below, like I'm sure there's a million more things. I think it's really good for our audience because what our experience is with little kids. Yeah. And so we've given some really good like tips, in my humble opinion, about parenting little kids and momming really well. Can you think of any other, as we bring it to a close, when you think about the role of a mother and the importance of that, any other like free thoughts about, hey, here's a piece of encouragement, or hey, here's again another practical wisdom tip, anything like along those lines that comes to mind?
So when I like sit down and give myself like goals on how to be the best, I take my responsibility the Lord has given me very seriously. And I say, what am I doing now to help grow and help my children thrive? And they're all going to be different, right? They're all going to have weaknesses and strengths that are different. But what are things that I can be doing right now to help them succeed in the best way? And really stepping back and realizing I am raising my children to leave me. And as a mom, that's so hard because it's like I was ripped apart for them. Like literally, I bled for them and I destroyed my body over and over for them. And it's like you create this just real emotional, tangible, almost like obsessive love for them.
Yeah.
And then it's as I'm training them and teaching them, I'm telling myself like, back away.
Yeah.
Back away. So my goal is when Maverick is older.
That's our oldest.
Is when he's 18 or whatever, that like he doesn't need me anymore. And then I would never forget someone told me like there's this graph, like when they're very young, your main role is like the trainer and the protector and the overseer. And when they're like 18 or however old, you are their counselor and you're their guide. And you're that source of, hey, mama, I got to talk to you about something. I need help. Yeah. And then there's this like graph where like you gradually become less and less of their overseer and protector and more of their like, go figure it out. Go figure it out.
And you'll be there to
fail.
Yeah.
And let me help you.
Yeah.
Fail. So we've already done that with Maverick. Like we're already deciding little things where I'm like, we live on the lake. And I'm like, Lance, I don't know why, but just the fact of asking Maverick to go out and get the mail for me is like, I need to watch him from the window. because a car could hit him. I have to remind him when we go on walks to watch out for cars. I need to find safe ways to start letting go already.
Yeah.
So tangible, like, what's your overall goal? My goal is to raise intelligent, loving, kind, smart, independent children.
Yeah.
To go out and conquer the world, be the best versions of themselves, but also like, how can I do that? So what are things I'm doing now? So intentionality, I think that's the most important thing for me. Like, don't just go through life by feelings and what feels good.
Yeah.
Like, be intentional. Even every night, like with your nighttime routine, what are you doing? What are the types of stories you're telling them? So it's like
At night.
at night.
Yeah.
So what are the things that I'm doing? So just being intentional, I think. And
Yeah. I love that.
but also just know I'm raising them to leave me.
Yeah.
And that's how it's
And
good.
there is a life with your spouse after your children leave.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
And
okay.
I'm so happy that you mentioned that. You mentioned that at the beginning of one of those things that's so important.
Yeah.
You know?
And I can't remember who said this. And I try to be a consumer of information, a consumer of other people's opinions and knowledge. And someone said there are really 3 stages of your marriage. There's before kids, there's like little kids, and what do they call it? The carpooling ages, like where you're jumping around. And then there's after kids. And the kids stage is busy and it's hard. And sometimes you're like, oh, I love you, but I got to go to sleep, or I'm so tired, or I'm this. And you don't take the time to invest in each other. That is just as integral when parenting is also investing in that. That way your kids can see healthy parents
Yeah.
when they are leaving the house, because so many divorces happen like gradually. And it's like finally when the parents are like, okay, we can finally divorce because I just don't even like, we've grown apart. I don't even want to be married.
Yeah.
But guess what? Training 18-year-old of how to treat a woman or how to treat a man just by your actions. So it's like also thinking part of parenting is what are you doing to be an example to them?
Yeah. I love that. I can say from my perspective, God has richly blessed us with a fantastic mom. I think you do a really good job, and I'm really thankful for you. And again, I don't think that we are perfect. I think we fail a lot. But when you talk about consistently coming back and refocusing and continuing to strive to be the best mom that you possibly can, that is what it's important. And so for those of you that are listening out there that are, again, you find yourself and you're just like, man, I don't know, I could never do that or whatever. Just take 1 or 2 things and put it into practice. You know what I mean? 1 or 2 things to make you better. But
I feel like, so I do social media stuff over on Instagram or TikTok or wherever. And sometimes it's looking at someone's life from social media is like totally skewed. And we do our best to like real life, but a lot of times you just do funny stuff or whatever random. And I feel like I get a lot of questions a lot like, how do you do so much? Like, how do you do it all? Like, how do you do so much? And I know I'm a high functioning person. I like to be busy. I'm always growing. I'm like, let's do this as a tech. So I know that about myself. I enjoy that. I'm not someone that sits around a lot, and I make myself sit and read books. I make myself sit and watch TV with you. Otherwise I'm like, let's do something different. But when someone asks like, how do you do so much? My answer is, I don't, we do. And I feel like we are able to be so intentional with our children and really focus on what are our important roles, because it's important to us to work together.
Yeah.
So as a mother who I feel like the times that I feel like I'm the most successful mother, the times that I feel like I'm the best mom, it's because you've taken my burden away of having to do the dishes, or you've given me the gift of being a really good teammate.
Yeah.
So I can be a good mom. And I think that is, again, it's going to be so different for a single mom because you're having to do everything. But just a challenge to the dads out there, like, what can you do for your wife on Mother's Day? Be a good teammate. Yeah. Honestly, be a good teammate to where she's not doing everything. And I think that, and being so considerate and not doing the whole tit for tat thing that a lot of couples do when their parents like, you're gone for 3 days on a guy's trip, so I'm going to go on a girl's trip for 3 days, or you were gone for 4 hours golfing. I always joke with Lance because he's a big golfer. I'm like, I'm starting a girls golf league and I'm going to be gone for 4 hours. But at the same time as Lance, he'll go do this, but then he's always so thoughtful and kind to make sure I feel like I have had my time to go take a bath or whatever it is that I want to do. So
I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually have a trip planned to go to Pinehurst here in a couple months. So
I support you.
So everyone's watching right now. So we're good, right? We're good.
You're bringing the kids with you.
Oh, I was hoping you'd be like, as long as I get to go on a girls trip.
No, I don't. That's the thing is I don't like, I like being home, but I do think like having that support of one another is super helpful as a mom.
Yeah. I think as we wrap it up, we want to say a very special happy Mother's Day to all you moms out there. We know that it is often not easy, and no one has written the perfect playbook, but there's a lot of really great wisdom in community. And there's a lot of really great wisdom that comes from the scriptures. And so hopefully, maybe you heard one or two things that Sarah is practicing as a mom of 3 kids under 5 years old. And as we continue in our quest to bring high quality content to you, we hope that this is just a part of that process.
Yeah.
So happy Mother's Day. We hope that you have a fantastic day in that. And we're going to go enjoy this Costa Rican sunset.
And whether you're a stay-at-home mom, a working mom, a single mom, or even a mom of a lost child or unable to conceive, know that God has a very, very purposeful plan for you.
Yeah.
And just leaning into it and finding and just being so intentional and loving life.
Yeah.
Until next time, y'all, thanks for being here with us. We love hanging out with you. Cheers to living your wild, intentionally, balanced, authentically, throwing a little fun sometimes.
I like that a lot.
And that's a wrap.
We are going to check out and probably enjoy a couple strong beverages while we're on vacation for 4 more days. Shout out to our parents who are holding down the fort. You got this. We love you guys. I think I need to say Happy Mother's Day and Father's Day because they're dealing with a lot.
They'll get their day.
But hey, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.